Okay, so in the Britain migration paper, you are going to get a question which asks you to compare to events or to people in some way. And what you're going to be asked for is about how similar they are. That's the crucial thing. In this case, you're being asked to compare the 100 Years' War and the Viking invasions, and the crucial thing is the impact on Britain of both of those two things. So that's your focus, it's the impact on Britain. It's an 8-mark question, which means you should be spending approximately 10 marks, 10 minutes on it, okay? Always worth doing a bit of planning first, I would suggest. People often don't, but I always think it's a really good idea. Okay, so that's the basics. Now, how do you answer this question? What is the examiner looking for in this question? He is basically looking for you to identify 2 factors or ways in which they are, in this case, similar. That's the ideal, okay? The absolute best answers, the top level answers, will also have some sort of judgment at the end that shows how those 2 factors are connected in some way, okay? So in other words, that's a sort of judgment at the end. But the crucial thing to bear in mind is, can you talk about 2 factors using our old friend PEE? Okay, so there we go. So effectively we're talking, in an ideal world, a couple of PE paragraphs and a short judgment, okay? Right, so how would I answer this kind of question? Well, if I was sitting there in the exam and I'm thinking compare the impact, my first starting point would be to say something like, let's use some big broad headings. So can I think of any consequences or impact that were social? In other ways, the way that people's lives changed because of those 2. Maybe there were economic impacts. In other words, stuff to do with how people earn a living or money, that kind of stuff. Were there military impacts, in terms of, did it change the way wars were fought? Something like that. Were there political changes? In other words, did it change who was in control, who ran the country, that kind of thing? Another one I might think about is cultural. Did it change, I don't know, something like music or art in some way? Okay, so those are some of the... If you're thinking, how on earth do I start? If you've got those headings in your mind, then what you can do is you can sort of start to hang your ideas off them. So what have we got? Well, we've got 2 things here, haven't we? The first of one is the 100 Years' War, and the second one is the Vikings. Now, the thing to think is, what springs to mind when you think of the changes of the 100 Years' War? And what I think perhaps are some of the biggest changes is, I know, well, actually both of those had a big economic impact on Britain. And I've just got to sort of develop that a little bit. I know both of those had an economic impact on Britain. And so now I'm going to start with my first heading very quickly to sort of think about, well, in what ways were they similar? How did they both change Britain economically? And so probably I'd be thinking about, well, the 100 Years' War, cost Britain a lot of money, didn't it? It was very costly because it went on for 116 years, on and off, and it was very costly to do that. And the second reason it was costly is, I know, don't I, that by the end of the 100 Years' War, England had lost her French possessions. So, that had gone, that large empire. The only thing that was left was Calais. So, it was ultimately very costly in the long term. You could say that in the short term, there were gains because England, could kidnap French nobles and ransom them. But in the long term, it was costly in the sense that England lost her French sort of empire, and it was very costly to raise an army. So that's one thing. Now, what do I know about the Vikings? Well, I also know that was very costly because, do you remember, the Anglo-Saxons had to pay Danegeld to stop the invasions. So it was a very, very expensive for the ruling monarch there. So there you go. I found some similarities. So that's one thing I'm definitely going to talk about. In an ideal world, I'd like to talk about something else if I could. If you just did that and did it well, you're definitely going to get half marks. But can I talk about something else? Well, I think another really big impact is, if you like, the way that people's lives change. So I'd say there was a big social impact, yeah? And I think that was about identity, which really changed because of both of those invasions. The first thing I'd probably want to say is that it changed language. Can I say that about both of them? I think I can, because the Danes introduced, the Vikings introduced new words. Egg, yeah, that was we know that was a new Viking word, don't we? And what I would say is, in a sense, the English language changes again because of the 100 Years' War. So for the 100 Years' War, the thing there is, again, the language changes because there's a move away from French. So you can see that the language changes because of both of these wars or invasions. In one sense it changes because you get new words. In another sense it changes because English becomes more important than French because of this anti-French feeling. So look, I've got a couple of big changes I can talk about there, which is great. And so all I need to do then is make some sort of comparison between the two. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write this thing. Now obviously I've spent a long time planning this and I'm talking through it, and you wouldn't necessarily spend as long as that, but that's okay because I think I just wanted to get to the point. So now I'm going to have a go at writing this thing, and just like you, I haven't prepared this, so I'm just going to think about how I do it. Right, so I'm thinking about point, evidence, explanation, paragraphs. Here I go, don't I? So I'd say one similarity was the economic impact. Okay, nice and straightforward. I'm straight in there. The examiner knows that I'm going to talk about this factor, and then I'm going to start giving some evidence. So I'm now going to say, for example, the 100 Years' War cost the English crown a fortune, and in the end England lost valuable French lands. Okay. Similarly, the Viking invasions cost the Anglo-Saxons leaders money in Danegeld. Now I'm going to just do a little explain so that he knows. Therefore, both had a long-term negative impact financially on England. Right, clear, good. That's my first one done. I'm going to get 4 out of 8 for that, but you see how useful planning is. I hardly spent any time writing. Next paragraph, okay? Another similarity was that language, or the English perhaps I should put, language changed as a result. For example, the Viking settlers introduced new words into English such as egg. Also, the 100 Years' War changed English as French words became less significant in a reaction against the enemy, if you like, I'll put that. Right. Therefore, both the war and invasion changed the way English was used. There we go. So I'm going to get 6 out of 8 for that, which is a very strong mark. But can I find some sort of connection between the two to bring all this together? So I've got language on the one hand, and I've got the economic impact on the other hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the most significant impact was on the language, as the changes continue to last to this day, whereas the economic impact was relatively short-lived. And there we go. I've got a judgment at the end. I've got 2 strong paragraphs with some evidence clearly linked back to the question, and I've got a judgment at the end. And that broadly is what you're looking for in one of these questions. Okay? Hopefully that is a useful little explanation as to how to do that question. And there you go. I've done it in 12 minutes, which you've got 10 minutes for it, and I've been talking an awful lot. So it should be within your possibility to have a go at something like that. There you go.